All right, we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the live chat for Wednesday, July 23rd, 2025. Looks like we are live and ready to roll. Let's check all of the areas here. There's YouTube, and let's see, we're on Facebook and we're on X. So it looks like everything is running just as expected. So that works. So let's talk about tonight. What shall we talk about? All right. First of all, we don't have a book of the month yet, week right now, because I have to get more books because we actually used all of them in my entire library. Book shopping, yes, and perfect timing too, because in 2 weeks it's my birthday. So there we go. So I'm going to be 46. And decided after 40, you don't, what you do 4 point, right? So it's 4.6. So I'll be five in about 4 years. So there we go. That's how we age now. Thus all of the Godzilla stuff, you know? So I had an interesting conversation with one person on X. It happened to be with this CDM, the Certified Digital Meteorologist, and an interesting question came up as far as should someone have all the math involved? And it's interesting, and I was a little bit taken aback by it. Um, but then I started to think, and I'm going to explain to you why you need the math. Okay, especially if some of you young meteorologists, and I get it, it can be very, very, very cumbersome, and you can sometimes sit there, and I've been there, where you're sitting in college, you're a freshman or a sophomore, especially sophomore, and you just got through all of this math in calculus 2, or it could be calculus 3, depending on where you're at, and you're wondering to yourself, when am I ever going to use this stuff? And the key thing that you have to understand is that, will you ever actually sit there and do a calculus problem in order to do a forecast? And the answer most likely is no. Okay, that's definitely true. Right? I don't sit here and do calculus all the time. I do sometimes because I'm a little nutty, but yeah, sometimes you'll need to use that just to kind of figure out some of the atmospheric equations involved. And trust me, you're definitely going to need it if you want to get any of these certifications. Not so much the CDM, but definitely the CCM. Okay, Certified Consulting Meteorologist, from the American Meteorological Society. So yeah, you still need to know the math, but the key thing to understand is the reason why you need to understand these equations, and the reason why it's really important to follow a meteorologist who appreciates those equations is that when the crap hits the fan and you don't have all the data, and let's say your model data might be missing, I don't know, the GFS goes and crashes, or European guidance for whatever has a delay in coming out. You can't sit there and say, well, I'm not going to do a forecast because I don't have all of my toys. That's when you have to go back to the basics. Not only that, but when you want to find errors in all the model guidance, and when you're trying to rise above and be the best meteorologist you can be, and when you also have this thing called AI right on your tail, you need to be able to understand those equations. It is very seductive to just say, I just need to ask AI, what does this equation means? Or what does this math, why do I need to know this math? I'll let AI calculate it for me. Because eventually you keep doing that, guess what? AI is going to replace you. And I'm not against artificial intelligence. It's very interesting. I think it could be a great tool. But if you use it as a crutch, which basically some of you guys are out there, even when I hear this, even with college students, well, I don't need to know this. I'm just going to ask AI. I don't need to study history. I'll just ask AI. What you're basically saying is that I'd rather remain ignorant. I don't want to know how things work. I just want to hit the button and have a drink drop by and my food delivered to me. I don't want to know how the world works. That's not the way to live life, my friend. Definitely not the way to build a career. And it's not the way to become knowledgeable. Because when that button doesn't work, what are you going to do? Right? I know it sounds a little old fashioned. I'm not saying don't use technology. Of course not. I'm just saying if you're going to use technology, understand how it works because it might catch you by surprise. So, with that, that brings us to the tropics. And this is going to get interesting because this falls right into what I was talking about. Now, remember a couple of days ago, the NHC and also a wide variety of models were suggesting that, hey, something might be developing out here. We better put a 10% on there. And we got up all the way up to about, I think, 30% and then knocked back down to 10%. Meanwhile, as you premium members know, I basically was sitting there saying, yeah, no, this isn't going to develop. We'll keep an eye on it, but no. Why was I confident of that? Well, because we have a lot of dry air and a lot of shear. Two things that basically kill tropical systems. Okay, no matter what the model guidance says, if you have an environment that basically is as deadly to tropical formation as cyanide is to humans, you're not going to get much development. And here's another wave that was pretty strong over Africa. It was producing plenty of convection. And it moved into this dry environment. Has a nice little mid-level circulation, absolutely. And that's probably what the model guides are trying to pick up, especially in some of the 12Z guidance. But it doesn't matter because there's no convection. No convection means that there's no warm core circulation because there's no warm core process. There's no transport. There's no evaporational release. There's no process, warm core process going on because there's no convection. Why? Because you have a lot of dry air. And until you get rid of this environment, which doesn't look like it's going to be leaving anytime soon, especially not through, oh, I don't know, August 7th, um, I don't really see much in the way of development. Now, as I've been saying, keep an eye on the East Coast and the Gulf Coast because we have that stationary boundary hanging around. Let's see here. Let me zoom in. So basically, you keep on having these stationary fronts hanging around. And there is a chance that this little trough here, you see this trough right there, that could spawn a little bit of a circulation that could meander into the northern Gulf here. It could spawn a tropical depression maybe in the next 5 days. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. But again, I'd put this at like 10% or lower, honestly. So those are my main areas. The rest of the tropics are as quiet as you could possibly get it. In the meantime, what about the model guidance? Well, as you know, I like to use the precipitable water guide values as a forecast. And one of the things that's very interesting is that any type of circulation that develops is taking on a very interesting, unique structure. Let's zoom in on this puppy here. Now it looks like, hey, it looks like a little S here, maybe some sort of circulation trying to form. But you see this right here? You see this signal right here? This is drawing dry air in. This is baroclinic, okay? This is not a warm core circulation. This is perhaps most likely a tropical wave that's interacting with a mid-level low pressure system, cold core, driving dry air into the tropical wave. The tropical wave interacts with it, doesn't have a chance to form anything. This would not form a tropical low. And the dry air is going to inhibit any type of development. So that's let's see, that's 180 hours out. It's like 8 days out. And you can see no real sign of anything that's really starting to rock. Now, you do have finally this signal here in the central Atlantic. Why is this different? Well, unlike the previous one, where you had dry air in the center of the circulation and you had a lot of shear interaction, This one, 10 days out, looks a little bit different. Call me a little skeptical though, because you still have a lot of dry air around it and you still have shear expected, but maybe in early August we might finally see some sort of development in the Cape Verde area. And it does match up nicely with the MJO briefly in 7. So, yeah, you could say it's something might bubble up, but I'm very skeptical of anything being impressive yet. But this signal here is probably the best signal we've had in the model guide so far this entire year in terms of any type of Cape Verde development. But also, what I should point out is that hey, our stationary boundary here could still remain to be a bit of a pest as well. So that's it with the tropics. Now, what about the long range? Well, a lot of people have been picking up on the fact that hey, there could be a trough and we get below normal temperatures, and the model guides have been very aggressive on this. The European, the GFS, the Canadian, UK Met, Korean. Yeah, that's a Korean. It's so. Um, Pull up any other type of model guides. The CFS. People are already using the CFS for the winter. Don't get me started. All right. So what is happening here? Is the pattern changing? Well, not really. It's the same thing. Negative EPO, ridge, trough over eastern Canada. What's changed? Well, the only thing that's changing is that we're moving into August. So, why is that important? All right, so your polar air masses are going to get a little bit stronger. Just a little bit, okay? And that's because we're starting to move towards fall. Now, we're not there yet, but because the polar air masses get a tad bit stronger and the polar jet stream is able to dig a little bit deeper, you're starting to get these anomalies showing up because polar air masses are able to invade. Wait a minute. Do you hear that? I think we have the ice cream man coming around. Now, the reason why, by the way, just in case you hear any crazy noise, we have the Monmouth County Fair like literally right across the street. So we're waiting for the fireworks. But when we take a look at this whole setup here, that's what I figures. When I look at this whole setup here, I think that the model guidance is overplaying the polar air mass influence here, and it's also trying to drive a Canadian maritime air mass in via this signal right here. See this little convergence and confluence right here in the guidance between our trough and ridge right here. Well, that's going to set up your surface high pressure system and drive your polar air mass in. So I think that is what is starting to take shape here. So when we take a look at the forecast for the 850 millibar temperatures, I'm not seeing much of a change here, except that your polar air mass is a little bit more aggressive. And what I suspect is going to happen is that this is going to back off a little bit as far as the intensity. Your pure polar air is going to remain up here and will stay basically in the mid to upper 80s. Don't be surprised because the precipitable water value is suggesting the deep tropical moisture is not that far off, that instead of sustained dry air, what you're going to get is a shot for about 48 hours, 24 to 48 hours, and then a rebound in your precipitable water values, much like what we were experiencing this weekend. This weekend, we're setting up where we get tropical air, a nice burst of heat, and then we back off. This isn't too far off from the summer forecast where I said we would be between the trough over the Canadian Maritimes and the St. Lawrence River Valley and the ridge over the Western Atlantic. Not much has changed except for the fact that the trough is a little bit deeper because we're going to start to go through our seasonal changes. With that said, I don't think, considering our temperatures here start off pretty warm, that this shift that we see, I think when we get towards early August and when we get closer to this, what you'll have is that temperatures will be near to slightly below normal for the first few days of August, and then we rebound to near to slightly above normal. I don't see any support for any long term shift to well below, like what this is showing, or well above. Okay, like what the model guidance was showing a couple days ago with like 4 straight days of hundreds. Philadelphia was being forecasted to be like 99, 102. Now it's backed off to like 92 and 95. Stay away from the extremes because I think that the changes going on in the atmosphere because of the lack of real forcing in the atmosphere is creating some erroneous extremes. So this is the SOI that I use to track for tropical forcing. And as you can see here, this whole setup here suggests pretty weak forcing. And it doesn't get much better with the QBO shifting towards an easterly phase, increasing higher chance for blocking. The stratospheric anomalies are kind of minoring out a little bit and resetting, but still a nice little warm pocket around the Aleutians, but it's starting to fade out as well. And your other tropical force in your MJO is pretty weak as well. You get that one shot into phase 6 and 7 that we're going through right now, and then we go into a neutral state. So all this tells me there's not much change in the forcing mechanisms here. So I'm not seeing much change in the forcing mechanisms. I am seeing seasonal changes because, I mean, after all, we are heading towards August. So all of this points to an evolution of a gradual step down. And as such, the best thing to do is stay away from any type of cold or warm extremes in this scenario. So as we look at August, the question you should ask yourself is anything changing in the main structure of the 500 millibar pattern? And the answer is no. So what we can expect is more of the same that we saw in July, except the primary difference is that these cold fronts that move through will not stall over the Delaware River Valley like they have been, but instead move through the Delaware River Valley and stall around the coastal waters. A little bit stronger push, a little bit stronger polar air masses, but we still have the interaction of 3 different air masses here: tropical, maritime, Canadian maritime, and polar. So that is how I am seeing this whole pattern shape up. And in terms of the evolution heading into fall, because I am working on the fall forecast, which is going to set up the winter forecast, it is interesting to see that the average here is to keep the EPO generally trending negative, not strongly negative like it is now. And this is without any type of major tropical interaction from the Western Pacific, which is pretty impressive. But the overall theme here is a gradual trend towards a weak negative state, and in the NAO, trending from positive towards a negative state as well. In other words, the QBO I just showed you, being in an easterly state, there's some of the influence right there. A gradual evolution of more sustained, established, high latitude blocking regimes. Something just to consider as we move through fall and into winter. Okay, very interesting signal showing up here. As far as the weather pattern right now, I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, after this, we're going out front. We're going to watch the fireworks. It's going to be amazing. It is amazing out. Okay, hopefully the mosquitoes don't be too much of a pain. But as you can see, not much going on in the radar. It's pretty quiet. Not much moisture in the atmosphere. I mean, remember we were experiencing this type of moisture. Now we're experiencing much lower precipitable water values in the atmosphere. And that is because we are basically under a nice ridge here. This is at 250 millibars. Look at the setup here. Your polar jet stream well to the north, nice north-northwesterly flow. At 500 millibars, same scenario, winds coming in from the northwest. But at 850 millibars, we have the upper level ridge sitting right over us. We start to see more of an influence coming in from the north and the northeast. And so as a result, on a water vapor satellite picture, it's as quiet as you can get, right? But you can see on the back end of here, a lot of short waves here. Polar jet stream's pretty active. Subtropical jet streams interacting. A lot of convection, a lot of moisture transport. And that is starting to brew some pretty impressive thunderstorms. So what about this weekend? What about Friday night? Well, let's take a look at some of the guidance here. So first of all, 500 millibars, not a lot of impressive lifting at all. But there is a hint here. You see this right here on Friday evening? There's our cold front. But unlike other cold fronts this summer, where the southwesterly flow at 250 and 500 millibars was basically parallel to the cold front boundary at the surface, this time it's more perpendicular. Notice the winter coming in from the west and northwest. This means that the cold front is going to get a shove. So it's finally going to move through the region, but it's going to put up a bit of a fight between this ridge here and this trough here and this confluence right here. See how this is kind of converging here, these winds right here? Okay, this is a sign right here that you're going to have a high pressure system at the surface. So, high pressure system here, tropical ridge here, combining with PVA here. Well, you got tropical air mass, polar air mass, maritime air mass, all converging here. Now that's just at 500 millibars. 850 millibars, it shows up even better, even stronger lifting. There's our trough. Here's our strong PVA for this time of year at least. And here it is trying to press south, but notice it runs into a roadblock. And another interesting feature that stands out here is this feature right here. So again, this makes sense because of the equation that we use. We know we're going to see convergence and confluence that we saw at 500 millibars and 250 millibars in this area. This would explain why we're seeing rising heights at 850 millibars and at the surface. It makes sense because you have sinking air. Sinking air is converging and setting down towards the surface, which builds up heights, which builds up high pressure here. This signal here, combined with this signal here, supports an idea of a stalled frontal boundary, maritime air mass getting driven in, and tropical air mass trying to overrun it. And so what does this look like when it comes to precipitable water value? Why am I very concerned about it? Well, look at the precipitable water values. On Friday evening, spiking up to 2.5, 2.6. When you start getting into this level, this is when you can get your 3 to 6 inch type rainfall events, like what we had a couple of days ago in Monmouth County. That's the type of scenario here. That's the type of signal that we're talking about. It may not necessarily set up in southern New Jersey, just north of Atlantic City, but you understand what the threat here. And then moving forward for Saturday, notice how we get this trajectory, this orientation here. Maritime air mass here, tropical air mass here. We're caught in between, impressive gradient. And then here we have all our deep tropical moisture for Saturday. And then on Sunday, again, deep moisture. So the reason why I'm showing you this is that this gives us an idea of the size of the sponge that we have to squeeze here. We have a lot of water in this sponge, just ready to get squeezed out. The question is, will it get squeezed out and where? So we already know that the lifting, as far as the synoptic lifting, is less than impressive. Well, what about the Cape values? Well, not exactly something that would scream severe, but definitely strong. When you see these Cape values between 500 joules per kilogram and almost 2,500 joules per kilogram, what that tells me is that you're going to have scattered thunderstorms, and a few of these thunderstorms are going to tap into this potential energy with all this deep moisture, and you also have veering winds. So this could lead to an isolated severe thunderstorm capable of producing a mesoscale low, possibly tornadic, definitely strong downburst wind gusts because you have the drier air at 500 millibars and you have all that deep tropical moisture being lifted into it. That deep tropical moisture condenses, cools, and rapidly falls to the ground like a rock. And that is how you get your downburst wind gusts. So that's definitely in play. Hail's definitely in play, and frequent vivid lightning. So Friday evening, somebody, not everybody, but somebody is going to get a pretty good thunderstorm out of this. And then there's our maritime influence. And what this tells me is that you're going to have elevated thunderstorms. Stable environment building in. Stalled frontal boundary, very unstable here. So what will happen is that you'll get your thunderstorms trying to form around Virginia and Maryland and Delaware, trying to lift north into New Jersey. They'll become what we call elevated. A few of them will try to retain severe level, but then the primary threat is going to be the intense downpours. Again, tons of moisture. You got isotropic lifting. That's essentially what you have here set up here. And then you end up with the potential for elevated thunderstorms capable of very heavy rainfall, and then showers capable of very heavy rainfall. And then on Sunday, the tropical air tries to surge northward. Again, another round of thunderstorms, but this time the polar air invades from the west and drives through. So now three air masses on Sunday, a lot of interaction, and air mass is gradually becoming more unstable for the Philadelphia metro than the New York City metro. Closer you are to the coast, the more likely it is just heavy rainfall. But overall, a very impressive active weather pattern for the weekend. And I like to use 700 millibars to just kind of get an idea of the scattered nature. Sometimes the 700 millibar relative humidity gives me an idea of a straight line event of bow echoes and whatnot. This is a signal of more scattered, and then the same thing on Saturday. Scattered. So you'll have a mix of sun and clouds, scattered thunderstorms. Wherever they develop, it's going to get pretty nasty. And then Sunday is a little bit more concentrated. And so let me jump to 90 hours here. And again, pretty quiet. Friday is going to bake. Okay. Look at your temperatures. You're talking about your temperatures in the upper 90s. Again, the model guidance, like I was saying a couple minutes ago, was saying 103, 104. They didn't buy it. It went 99, 97. Looks like that's going to set up pretty nicely. You add in the relative humidity, you're talking about heat index over 100 degrees anyway. Here we go, Friday evening. It's going to be stormy. We're going to stay in. We'll have Chinese. It'll be all good. But the weekend is not a washout. But the best way I'd put it to you is this: if you have plans for the weekend, it's not a washout, but if you get one of those thunderstorms, it will be a knockout in terms of very heavy rainfall, slow moving, and potential for localized flash flooding and a lot of vivid lightning. Or you miss out and you just get mixed with sun and clouds and you luck out. So that's basically what the weekend is looking like as we see this pattern evolve. So let me jump to here. And now is the time where I start answering all of the questions that's on social media. Of course, first we answer all of the questions from the premium chat room, which looks like it is very active this evening. It's good to see everybody. Of course, the card always has a lot of good questions. I got some other questions here um, that were also asked by a couple of members as well. So let me jump into that, and then of course we go into the social media world. YouTube, I see you guys are active, and we'll check out X as well. Oh, of course I'm checking up on the baseball scores. Mets already won. The Phillies, I thought they were leading 4-0. What the heck happened? It's 6-5 now, Boston, and the Yankees and Blue Jays are tied. The Yankees need this game. They need this game bad. So I'll keep an eye on that. Okay, so Michael asks, is Friday a marginal or slight risk severe day you think for New York City area? Okay, so I would say that they'll probably keep it as marginal. Um, they might upgrade to slight if we get more of a widespread severe threat, or widely scattered severe threat. Right now, I'm looking at it more as an isolated, but those thunderstorms that reach that severe levels will be impressive. What about Sunday? Sunday is more about heavy rainfall. I think severe weather is going to be focused more towards southern New Jersey and Philadelphia and the Delmarva Peninsula. Euro hinting at elevated thunderstorms on Sunday. Yeah, I'm very concerned more about the heavy rainfall potential here than the severe weather. But at the same time, there is a shortwave involved here that might be a little bit too amplified in the guidance. It looks like there's a little bit of convective feedback with it in terms of the errors involved with it. Let me see if I can find. Here we are. Let me just bring this up real fast. Okay, so on Sunday afternoon, it produces a pretty good rainfall event here showing up. It's starting to back off in the intensity. Let me pull up the 0Z from last night real fast. And the the setup here on Sunday just screamed at convective feedback here with these low pressure systems all over the place. It's starting to improve a bit now with the 12Z, a little bit more realistic. But basically, what it's trying to show here, okay, and this is how you're supposed to use model guides. I'm not saying that definitely Connecticut is going to get all the heavy rainfall. What the model guidance is telling me is that wherever these showers form and set up, they're going to be capable of some very heavy rainfall. It may not be here, it may be down here, because this is a convective element in the forecast. And so the European guidance, which is a synoptic model, may not be handling the convective element very well, but it can show me what the potential is. So that is what we're seeing here. And why do I know that? Well, because I understand the physics involved in the model and I understand the equations and the mathematics behind it. Roping right back to why you need math, even when you're getting a certification, even if you don't use it all the time. So let me go back here. So I got that. Do you think August gets warmer after the 15th? I don't think so. Honestly, I think that we've seen the worst of our heat that we experienced back in June, where it was like 100 degrees all over the place. I think that was the worst of it. I think for August, we'll be slightly above normal, but I think a lot of our above normal anomalies are actually going to come from the morning lows rather than the afternoon highs. I say the afternoon highs are probably going to be seasonable, near normal. Does September look warm to hot or much cooler locked in? I'm not entirely sure about September just yet, but I don't see any wild swings. I'll put it that way. Um, but I'll have my fall forecast out probably right around August 15th or so, and I'll start nailing all that down. Maybe a little earlier. Good evening card. Rock and roll. Looking at Earth News School. This is from Card. Looking at Earth News School, it appears 70 millibar temps have cooled around the Aleutians and the part of the Pacific. We show that. While warmer temperatures have spread a bit south and east from Hudson Bay to off the coast of Newfoundland. Yes, we're seeing basically a reset in our weather pattern, which is typical. The latest stratospheric guidance does suggest we continue to remain in the same type of setup, although not as robust as what we were seeing earlier. Speaking of GFS, even the 18Z GFS is unable to spin up any Atlantic hurricanes. So that is a sign of futility right there when it comes to the tropical season. If you can't even get the 18Z GFS to spin up a tropical system in this environment, you're not getting it anywhere. Relying on AI to give answers means they have not seen nearly enough Twilight Zone episodes. Enough of those were trusting computers, the voice from the machine leads to very bad things. Heck, I even go to Star Trek The Next Generation I was just watching. If all you do is rely on computers to answer every question and not be a little curious about how you get to these answers, again, one of the things you could use AI for, and one of the things I'm learning using it for right now, is I want to review calculus. So I asked AI to give me examples of how to use uh, an equation with latent heat release, right? And go over the details of that and trying to figure out what I might be missing, right? That's for education. That's basically saying, hey, I'm looking for details on how to improve my knowledge. That's great. When you say I don't want to think, I just want it to do it for me, that's when you miss the boat because you're missing a lot of opportunity and you're basically setting yourself up for failure. FYI, drive to AC on Sunday was fine. Just got a brief sprinkle. Backyard morning, probably fringe or spin up to convection that spawned the water spot to the east. Yep, I'm glad you were okay. That's good. A 250 and 500 millibar jet in the Atlantic seems way too strong to allow anything to spin up as well. Yeah, the shear is pretty strong this year. It's very El Nino like. Let's see. Rob Allen asks, would you be willing to give an estimate? I'm doing good tonight. Regarding when you think the negative NAO EPO locks in, please say after November, not in September. I'm sure you'll get where I'm going with this. Um, I am very hesitant to give any type of declaration for November because I know where people are going to take it. I will say this: the global parameters have my attention in terms of the negative QBO state. Because at the very least, whatever locks in is going to be there for a while. I I can say with confidence that the El Nino Southern Oscillation, and so is going to be neutral. I'm just not sure if it's going to be cold neutral or warm neutral. And that's going to have some influence in terms of how I look at the subtropical jet stream and the high latitude blocking. Um, I don't know exactly how the stratosphere is going to play out just yet in terms of the temperatures and the potential for warming. So these are things I'm not sure about yet, but I understand where you're going. With these polar air masses being able to push through, do you suspect a threat for derechos in August? It's certainly a possibility. Absolutely. Not the first week of August. It's the wrong pattern. But certainly after that, yeah, absolutely. We're definitely going to have to watch it. It's very rare, though. It's not like we're going to get like a string of them or something. But could we get a one? Yes. When was the last time you had a winter with neutral? And also those among those the last warm neutral one. Oh, it's been a while. I don't even remember. It's been a while since we've been neutral. I know that. Um, Maybe over a decade. It's been a while. Early estimation on timing of storms on Friday. I'm looking at basically 2 to 10. All right, 2 to 6 over northeastern Pennsylvania. Here, let me pull up a map rather than trying to. Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's see here. All right, perfect. Be helpful if I didn't knock this over. Okay, so from 2 to 6 is going to be up here, and then from 4 to 8 it'll be the I-95 corridor, and 6 to 10 southern New Jersey. That's what this line is basically going to be doing. I try to explain things too much with my hands. Sometimes it's best just to use a map. Let's take a look at social media. Holy smokes. Looks like YouTube's been busy. Let's see here. Out of books. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Working on getting more. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the happy birthday. I didn't realize cold core lows could form in the tropics. I thought they were usually tied to subtropical jet. They can. You'll get like a lot of upper level lows. That's usually a cold core process. It's not as robust as what you would see in the mid latitudes, right? But anytime you have a frontal factor where you're having slightly drier air, like let's say dew points in the mid 60s as opposed to the mid 70s, that will lead to a cold core process rather than a warm core process. So yeah, it could definitely happen. It always does. In fact, playing times in the Caribbean, you'll get like a cold core upper level low sitting around the Western Caribbean that will gradually give way to a warm core process that could actually develop a upper level low. Let's see. Are stratospheric anomalies in line with seasonal expectations? Yeah, yep, for the most part. At least what I've been expecting. Let's see here. Bullpen giving it up late for the Phillies again. Well, hey, I gotta say, I was calling it when they lost their closer. That was going to be a problem, but they're also going to make some trades. So snow in November. Not saying anything on the coastal plain, but can't rule it out for the interior or higher elevation. Sure. Is there any chance for flash flooding come Sunday afternoon? Yes. When you have precipitable water values pushing over 2 inches, there's always that threat, especially if you have any areas with very poor drainage, right? And they're not keeping it up to date. So yeah, I'm definitely mindful of that potential. Yes, it's something I'm definitely going to be watching. Is it too early to predict the timing of weather on Sunday? Sunday is just going to feature waves of scattered showers and thunderstorms almost all day. Most likely picking up in coverage in the afternoon with using with the amplification of daytime heating, but it's even going to be a threat in the morning. Again, I don't see this as a washout, but again, if you get hit with one of those showers or thunderstorms, you're going to know it. That is for sure. Let's see. Do we have anything on X or Facebook? Okay, what do we have here? I see heat mid August as the MJO enters in the ocean and falls negative PNA. Um, well, I mean, I don't know about that. Let me think. Um, I don't really see any indication of the MJO. Let me pull up on something real fast here. I'm just looking at some of the data real fast. Yeah, it's not really all that strong of a signal. You really want something more robust. I mean, you got the CFS, but I mean, it's the CFS. Um, let's see here. No, Boma's old. You have the Boma, which is kind of like the Australian version, but it is way more aggressive than any other guidance. So that's a little skeptical on that. Let's see, European ensembles really doesn't support that. GMON, GFS guidance really doesn't support that. Nah, I probably wouldn't. I probably wouldn't jump on that. To be honest with you, I think that might be a little aggressive. I would not be surprised to get a hot day or two in mid-August. I'm not saying that. I definitely, mid-August I can't rule out a 95, but any sustained heat wave, it's a little questionable right now. Let's see here. I think Facebook is good. And looks like we answered all the questions. Let's see. Reservoirs are doing very good. We're definitely have a drought issue. We're pretty much where we are should be say near normal. So that is some pretty good news on that. So that thankfully we don't have to worry about that. Of course, the negative aspect of that is that if we do get influenced by any tropical system, fortunately that is going to lead to flooding. So that is a concern. Let's see. Meanwhile, excellent questions, by the way. Outstanding questions. Very nice. Just a baseball update. The Phillies are still losing. Makes me happy to say that. I'm sorry. Look, I got nothing against Philly fans. I got nothing against the Philly players. I have nothing against even the stadium. But your mascot personally attacked me and took my popcorn when I was a kid. And as such, I have an unending war against that mascot. It will pay. One day it will pay. When it least knows it, I will get my revenge and my popcorn back. It was. I was a little kid. Look, I had a Mets cap on. I was 9 years old. No, 6 years old. You're right. But I had a Mets cap on, right? And I was eating popcorn. Popcorn. And this freak takes my popcorn, sticks his tongue out, and runs away. Now, that's just mean. It's not right. I remember when TV forecasts were only 3 days, but everybody also wants to see the next weekend's weather. I will say this forecasting has really improved a lot, but we live in a society where everyone is give it to me now and it better be 100% correct or else you're horrible. Uh, and in terms of forecasting, I don't know why, but they don't put that type of pressure on sports betting or economics. These guys could be wrong 100% of the time, and it doesn't matter. They'll still get a TV slot and they'll still get plenty of money, and people will use them to bet or to invest. But meteorology, where you literally have to forecast chaos, well, that one, you better be 100% right all the time. I don't get it. Our improvement in being able to forecast has been amazing. We've been living in the golden age. And not to get anything political, but I hope that that isn't impacted with some of these budget cuts. Fingers crossed, but I'm preparing for the worst. That way I could be the best, right? That's how you do it. Let's see here. How come only Channel 4 does a 10-day forecast and other New York stations only 7? I don't know, and I don't work for them, so I can't really give you that answer. Uh, what do you think the Yankees stealing signs for second base? I mean, I don't know. I'll put it this way. I wouldn't be surprised if every team doesn't try to steal signs somehow. So it doesn't really bother me. If you really have a problem with it, you just throw a high and tight and send a little message. That's all. But I'm sure the Mets, if they see something on second when they're on second base, they're not saying something to the rest of their players, or if they see someone tipping pitches, that's part of the game. You know, it's only like when you try to, I don't know, use like a trash can to bang out Morse code, or if you try to use the cameras, then that's not cool. What is reliability on a 7-day forecast? Okay, that's a good question. All right, so first of all, you have to break down the seasons that you're in this 7-day forecast. A 7-day forecast in the summer is a lot more stable and a lot more reliable than in the winter. Because in the winter you have a lot more short waves to consider, a lot more interactions, more phasing potential. You have storm tracks, air mass considerations, which influences your precipitation type, precipitation amount, duration. Then you have your temperatures. So there's a lot more volatility in the 7-day forecast in the winter than any other time of the year. Your lowest volatility is going to be in the summer because then the question basically is there a thunderstorm or not? Is there a cold front moving through or not? So from there, you can get your temperatures, you can get your potential for a heat wave. a lot of it becomes far more stable in terms of reliability for your forecast. So it kind of depends on the time of year and and the factors involved. And then of course if you add in tropical systems, that's a whole other ball of wax that can be very complicated. Is it easier to forecast in the summer or winter? It's far more challenging in the winter. But here's something that I notice, and I'll be very careful when I say this. In the summer, you can get bored, right? And if this is something I learned when I was younger, you can get kind of get caught in this malaise, and by doing that, you kind of accidentally miss a severe or thunderstorm event or a convective event because you just see high pressure, high pressure, high pressure on the synoptic models, but you're not keeping an eye on the mesoscale models. Like a couple of days ago with the NAM, right, where we had the NAM trying to signal, hey, there might be a thunderstorm. We ended up with a water spout on the Jersey Shore when in reality, none of the model guys barely had anything, maybe just like some drizzle. So you're more likely to fall into a malaise in the summer and miss something by accident. So you have to stay on point with that and drink plenty of coffee. But in the winter, it's far more complicated, but it's a far more challenging and exciting period. Let's see here. How do you do long range forecasts on thunderstorms? You don't. All right. All right. So okay. So here's how I would handle this. First of all, anything beyond 7 days is garbage. So just throw it away. Okay, so from day 3 to 7, what I would look for is what synoptic factors would support thunderstorm potential. Let's say a polar jet stream with an enhanced 850 millibar jet showing up, which could enhance vertical wind shear and also increase the transport of moisture. Is there any strong polar air masses trying to push southward? Um, is there an upper level ridge to the west of a location that could support thunderstorms diving in from the northwest and also enhance the potential for moisture transport? For our region, is there any support for an easterly wind in any of these scenarios? Because an easterly wind sets up a stable air mass, but also could set up a instability gradient depending on the setup. Like let's say we already have a tropical air mass in place that could support thunderstorms further inland. Then you have to wait until you get mesoscale guidance to really pinpoint the locations. So those are the things I would look for. Um, but beyond that point, I wouldn't bother. Okay, let's see what we got back here. It was the use of cameras and then signals that was the problem. Players on the field picking up pictures from the field has never been considered illegal by Major League Baseball. Yeah, oh yeah, I totally agree. In fact, I think that it's. I mean, I have no problem with my team doing that at all. None. And it's the fault of my team if I let the other team, well, not me, I don't control anything, but if they let the other team pick up their signs and stuff because they're being sloppy, that's on the Mets, right? They need to make sure they got to tighten that up, right? Um, Not on the other team. The other team's just doing their job. That's what I would say. Let's see here. It looks like we got all the questions answered for tonight. Anything on Facebook? Figures. Oh, this is a good question I just got from YouTube while you're looking on Facebook. My wife's friend died in the flood in North Plainfield. Do you think National Weather Service gave enough warnings? They gave a ton of watches beforehand, and then they put out the warnings, and then constantly updated the warnings. So I would say yes. I think that they did the best that they could. Yeah, I would say that I'm not putting anyone to blame, but if I was president and I wanted to enhance the warning capability of National Weather Service, I would strongly advertise the use of a NOAA weather radio from Midland. Because those radio, first of all, when you set up the alarm, that thing will wake you up. Okay, you won't miss this. All right, but you don't need to worry about a cell tower or anything. It will be able to notify you wherever you are. And when I used to do camping, I used to bring one with me, have battery power, because when you're camping, especially back in the 90s, you didn't have the internet in the 90s. You didn't have anything. You had a radio maybe, and that's it. So no weather radio really saved my butt when I needed it, right? So I think that the National Weather Service does the best it can. I have yet to come across a scenario where they under warned in these scenarios of recent. Can it happen? Sure. People make errors, people make mistakes. I'm never going to say anyone's infallible, but thus far, the scenarios I've come across, um, honestly, as far as our weather pattern overall, as far as our capabilities overall, we have saved far more lives than those lost compared to where we were just 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago. So it's improving significantly. We also need to have some officials and even some individuals take our warnings more seriously, right? And stop acting like, especially this is true every time there's a hurricane. I'm gonna ride it out. I've been here forever. These people always overdo the storms. Every freaking time. It never I'm gonna have a party. I'm gonna get drunk. And then they end up either getting stuck in the middle of a flood, or they put everyone else in danger because they are trying to go and rescue them. So there's that aspect as well that we need to address. But unfortunately, I'm never going to say that the National Weather Service, or anybody, even myself, will be able to save every person that's involved in a storm. Sometimes, unfortunately, you try to do the best you can. Even then, you might miss something. And with that, it is basically 9 o'clock, so we're going to get ready for our fireworks. Thank you for, as always, joining our live chat. Always amazing questions, outstanding job as always. Thank you for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. It's actually helping to grow the channel quite a bit, and I'm looking forward to when we all start talking about more like winter storms, because I got some plans coming up for our winter storm. Some things I'm working on. So, and plenty of coffee, by the way, if I'm going to try to pull this off. Yes, yes, yes. But maybe more of a live chat, maybe, as we like something like what this setup is, right? But go through the entire storm. You see me lose my mind. We'll see how many people start to follow. Hey, this guy's been following a winter storm for 24 hours. I think he might be going insane. So that's gonna be fun. I do. That's true. So I just want to thank you all for being here now, and looking forward to everything else. In the meantime, stay safe out there.